Dobry wieczór, Igrzyska Wolności.
Good evening, Freedom Games. Hello. You are still with us. Great. As during as in the Galileo, the best wine is served at the end, and power speeches is the special part of the Freedom Games. And I'm very honored that we have managed to find such great panelists for this last event. As you can see, it's called The Values of Our Generation. Our generation is undefined based on age. So you will see some people from the demographic surplus. And as we heard from Rafał Trzaskowski, it's a problem of mentality. It's an issue, a question of mentality. So it doesn't matter how old you are. You can deliver the power speech. You know the tradition, 8 people, 8 minutes. And I hope that you will leave moved. Olga Drenda, a writer, journalist, translator, a graduate of culture of Jagiellonian University. She is interested in systemic transformation and anthropology of daily life. She has written several books, Ideas Around I, and Olga sent a title of her speech, not everybody sent, With Hope, but Without Delusions. Olga Drenda. Good evening. Can you hear me? I'm happy to see all of you. And I would like to start by saying that the title of this meeting is very serious. The values of our generation. And I have this generational approach that the generation would like to turn everything into a joke. And then I remember of a combi band that every generation has their vote. So let's consider what time that was. So the people who will present together with their speeches together with me on this stage are representatives of the generation that in 1989 were going to nurseries and kindergartens. So when I'm talking about my peers, it was the time which was rich with very emotional events and which raised high hopes. However, they have to be reviewed and verified. So when we are thinking about attitudes that result from these strange times, when we looking back, when I'm to sum up this value of my generation, I conclude that, as in the title in my speech, we are thinking about acting with hope but without delusions. And I will clarify what I mean. I deal with the everyday life in my work, and I analyze this word. And the more I study it, I admire the society more. So if you have so much enthusiasm when you create a new, better life, and reality is surprising, is becoming more complex, then it's easy to have a nervous breakdown. It's easier to turn back or to deny, because the fight for freedom has turned into small wars for authority. People who were used living monuments disappointed us. We found that they have lots of defects and they do not meet our expectations. So this breaking point also provided that many people lost their stability. They became poor. So when the more time I spend in this present, I'm present I'm becoming more and more critical, but I appreciate many things of the future. And when I'm thinking about my generation, I can see more evidence on the universal state of mind that I would define as a strong spirit and capacity to adaptation. When we follow our hopes, I think that the coordinates are moving. Our head is here and the legs are always there. So how I understand it, we act as if we were already in this better target world, which we are thinking of, and our feet, our legs are still somewhere else. At the same time, we still carry on as if the situation was normal, although the system has not been updated yet. So it's a difference between hardware and software. What to make sure that the hope is not the mother of stupidity, so that we do not become a boy from a meme. Who are you? I am the winner. Although we know that he believed in a magic spell that doesn't work. So it is going to help us to overcome the worst time because we are as if blinded walking down the tunnel, and then we have to verify whether we are on the right track, whether we are not lost. And the next condition is the second part of my speech, so no delusions. It sounds terrible, I think, it sounds pessimistic, but I understand it as being careful, prudent. It's a realism we meet every day. It's like a weight that is attached to a balloon to make sure that the balloon doesn't fly away. So I mean this prudence that we shouldn't invest all our faith into miracle makers, groups, ideas. That we have to make sure that we have to remember that nobody will make miracles for us, will not change the world for us. So I respect the people who are very careful when they judge people. So we are very careful when we treat someone as idols. And joke, good sense of humor is a good thing. Irony and good sense of humor is not perceived as a positive value. When we are writing our CVs, when we are developing the initiatives, people don't like when we introduce jokes into them. So we have to be careful. When we, of course, use sense of humor, but we should use it because it's like a buffer. It makes our reality more friendly. It helps us to provide us with a distance. It prevents us from sellers of magic ideas. So I treat it all as useful equipment, wisdom for the time of crisis, because such times can always start, and probably they will occur quite soon. When I was younger, I remember that adults like to repeat that my generation are the children of happy life, that we live in a happy and free country. I think it's different with happiness. Sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's better. I'm not quite sure to what extent my parents were right or not, whether it was their wishful thinking or disappointments. And just like in the Polish saying, when we are talking about the relations between happiness and reason, luck is not always happens, but definitely we have reason.
Było rzeczywiście Right, there were many candidates for Messiah, but it seems that deliverance is somewhere else. Stanisław Łubieński, a specialist in Ukraine, writer, cultural expert, publishes for dwutygodnik Gazeta Wyborcza, author of 3 books. He runs Dzika Ochota blog. Stanisław Łubieński. Good evening, I'm Staszek Łubieński, and I write about nature. So it seems I should tell a few words about nature. It seems we live in a safe world where everything is predictable. Plants derive energy from the sun, they absorb carbon dioxide, produce oxygen, and they provide food for animals, fungi, and different organisms. Once they die, they fall down and are absorbed by the soil, by the earth, and they give energy for everything that is growing. And that's the process that we all depend on. Everything in the world is happening owing to this process. But we also feel that we are on the verge of major changes which cannot be escaped. We're worried about the climate, drought, floods, that we want winters to be cold and summers to be hot. And we continuously watch the broadcast from apocalypse on the media. We try to rationalize it somehow, not in the way as the Ministry of National Education, which convinces us we'll pay less for heating owing to climate change. They also say we could grow grapevine and bananas here, but that's not the way it is, because climate change means unpredictability. If summer is extremely hot, winter can be extremely cold, and the bananas are over there. There are also other problems which might sound minor, trivial. For example, natural cycles are disturbed. Birds come, they should eat worms, but the worms are no longer available because they occurred earlier and something is wrong. Or plants start their vegetation and pollinating insects are not awakened yet, so they cannot pollinate. I wrote about environmental nervousness, that it's hard to be radical. I drive a car a lot. I spend a lot of time in Pomerania. It's around 1,000 kilometers from and to Warsaw, but on the other hand, I start wondering how to transport a family of 3 with a dog and a cat. I know I'm looking for excuses. Now I think about buying an air conditioner because it's really hard to stand heat in my flat. I'm only a vegetarian and not vegan. We all do it because, on the one hand, we feel that we want to do something, that we want to act. But on the other hand, we feel these are idle things, that our individual changes don't mean a lot, and that's partly true. However, I don't fly a plane, I don't buy new clothes, I don't eat eggs from unhappy hens, and I buy shoes which are made of recycled shoes. Don't buy such shoes. It's a joke. It doesn't make sense at all. It's called greenwashing. For us, these little things do matter because they help us feel we have initiative and we can do something. So I would like to say something that might sound ridiculous because that was not the main point of the Freedom Games. However, in my opinion, protecting the nature is pivotal. If we look at who the Minister of Nature is in Poland, it might seem it doesn't really matter because these are the positions for coalition members. These are only the figures who have no initiative, no will to act. They simply fulfill a commissioned mission. To me, protecting the nature is pivotal because without balanced nature, we can't think of economy, agriculture, infrastructure, or other gods that we like to send our prayers to. We are concerned about climate, but there are several disasters. A disaster which is related to climate, or the climate results from the disaster, and it can be more severe. This is the decrease in biodiversity. Biodiversity, it's a calque, it's biological diversity, actually. Why is biodiversity decreasing? Because of progressive changes in farming. The European Union subsidizes meat production. The structure of crops changes. We export natural raw materials. But an important aspect of the decreasing biodiversity is that we act in a senseless way. We are not the ones who bear the major burden of these changes, but let's think about mosquitoes. We detest them when they appear, everybody gets crazy, and special chemicals against mosquitoes are sprayed in cities, in parks, because it's not nice to walk in the park when mosquitoes are flying. But we have to remember they are at the very bottom of the food chain, and they are the base of life. If there are no mosquitoes, there are no birds, there are no reptiles, and finally, we don't exist. A mosquito is a funny insect that loves our blood and is really annoying, but it's simply food for other animals that we like. Mosquitoes have non-obvious functions that we often underestimate. Mosquito larvae filtrate water. I know it sounds really ridiculous, but that's the way it is. Safe for mosquitoes, all ponds would be full of algae and different blooming plants. They filtrate water, and that's their key function. But we want to protect large and charismatic animals such as bisons or lynx. So mosquitoes are not the ones we particularly love. The problem of biodiversity is that you can't see it very well. It's like with climate. Let's think about the monsters that live in soil. Per cubic meter, there are hundreds of organisms, different creatures you haven't heard of. They have really funny names. In one, such as Myriapoda, there are hundreds of mycelium per cubic meter, and the world, and it all makes the world go around. Very often we forget or don't understand the links between these organisms. Once we think how to take care of the biodiversity, is that we need to protect the habitats. The stability of biodiversity depends on the diversity of the habitats. We have a few major habitats that are constantly damaged. Taking the advantage of being here and opportunity to speak here, I would like you to remember that we have places that are not adequately protected in Poland, and they require rapid interventions and protection. These are the forests in the Carpathians, the natural jungles that and wilderness areas that are valuable in Poland, as well as marsh or swamps. Marshland disappears the fastest in the world. We have fewer marshland areas, and they are of key importance when we want to combat climate change. Marshland offers habitats for unique organisms. So I will end with a dry joke. If you don't want to end up in a marshland, you have to protect the marshland. Thank you.
Słuchajcie, no chyba jest jeden rzeczywiście sposób.
Well, I think there's one way. I'm a very practical man, so when I hear of such a challenge, I think about solutions immediately. So I think there's one way to save the situation. National forests. The state forests should be called national forests. And if regards the swamps, politicians should understand the meaning of the swamps. So I would like to appeal to the politicians, protect your own swamp. It's a joke, silly joke, because some people just drag themselves out of the swamps. The next speech, well, I have already heard the speech, and it is really worth your attention. A psychotherapist, a philosopher. She's co-founder of the Center Significance of Psychotherapy in Warsaw. Together with Tomasz Stawiszyński, she's got a program on Talk FM radio. She has prepared a speech, me and other people, about paradoxes of relationships. Cveta Dimitrova. Good evening. So you know the title, so I'll provide a background. I'll be talking about relationships, but I would like to start with a diagnosis. Our present experience is characterized by a form of loss. We are losing orientation in the world. We are losing references in the universum of science, expectations, and possibilities. We are losing the feeling of connection with other people. It's hard to find a place in a complex tissue of reality. We are losing the feeling of who we are, from where we are, and when we are going to. So these are existential questions. We cannot imagine the history of culture and philosophy without them. Now they fill us rather with fear than expectations and hope. So everybody knows this feeling, not only my generation. It's hard to talk about the values because the values mean the objects of loss, something unattainable, an object that we all miss for. So the values are relations, or maybe I should say bonds. It's interesting whether the Ministry for Loneliness in the UK is an example of an institution without which our world won't be able to exist. I think that in some time we lost the hope, and we have decided that we have only one horizon we can tackle with our mind. This is the only area we can change. So we found some assistance with some practices of individual work on ourselves. Psychotherapy, I actually practice. Shaping the feeling of our identity is done by aiming to perfection. It's not about being among other people. What I find striking is the premise that it's not about what we are, but what we should be. And it's our perception and the perception of other people. We suffer from some kind of blindness. We are not interested in ourselves. We do not understand ourselves. We have this need to catch something. We are just gathering attributes and signs that show that we meet expectations. And it's still not, we don't understand who we're looking for or what we're looking for. So we stopped seeing ourselves. So these words can be referred to the individual experience and to the collective experience, and even to the relations of mankind to the world, to the planet. So we are just fantasizing what is better, more attractive, more desired, and more ideal. And then we can turn to other people to find our place in the world. We have forgotten that we are already here. Soon after I received the invitation to deliver my speech, I was wondering how to share my thoughts with you. I was walking in Berlin and I saw a billboard advertising CrossFit. Such trainings are very popular, and it shows very well what's the degree of our demand for intensity. So the advertising said it was a marketing logo of what is going on in our houses. Don't demand too much of yourself. I thought that maybe it should be interpreted as care for ourselves, but of course it can also be an imperative. But I found out that it was something completely different. The logo, the statement said, "Don't demand too much from you. Leave it to us." And next, there was a logo of the company, and a statement, "Measure your weakness." So of course we shouldn't follow such attitudes and beliefs. We shouldn't think. We shouldn't try to eliminate things that we do not want to have, especially things we have. So we need separate spaces, such as psychologist surgery. So we have to face our weaknesses, our anxieties, fears, loss, and the lack of orientation. So we want to get rid of these attributes, and we want to join the society. We want to start working effectively, because we only exist when we act. So this advertisement said, don't think about yourself. Someone else will do it for you. They will give you everything you need to live. I don't think we should think this way. I think that the role of the internal voice of imperative order aimed at adapting people to function in the social world. But we shouldn't be totally subordinate to this world. But what if this figure, this instant, its form becomes predominant? If it becomes so important that you cannot see yourselves or other people, and that it has an authoritarian nature. You have to demand things of yourselves, measure your weakness. This is something the society wants from you. This is what other people want from you. This will make you a member of the community. So this is why people are hiding the fears, and people are trying to fit their identity to the expectation. So there is no place for relations, because the way we imagine ourselves do not meet the expectation. And we also not able to perceive other people. So this dynamics is perceived differently by another psychotherapist who defines it as a fascist state of mind. It's not about ideology, but the dominance of the specific way of thinking. So you should be demanding of yourself, and you should get rid of weakness. Is this the right state of mind, despite the political beliefs? What do we believe in if all the time we are surrounded by the message that we should overcome limitations? Then we should ask ourselves who we are and where we're going to. So this intensive orientation on the target, on a better I, getting rid of controversies, emotions and weaknesses, doubts. Fantasy becomes reality. As a psychotherapist, I am attached to the idea that the way we perceive ourselves depends on the relations, first of all, with our families and in a broader social context, where we are living together with our families. So on the one hand, we want to be independent, but we want to improve ourselves, or we want to get rid of something we do not want to have. So this is when we enter into conflict. So if we cannot recognize who we are, if we cannot bear complexity of processes we live through, we have no chance to negotiate anything with other people. If we have no permission for limitations, we do not permit limitations in other people. We shape the culture we wouldn't like to live in. So imperfection of nature is so difficult that's why we have to run away from into the fantasy. So we should improve relations in ourselves, but an attempt of improving these relations is reflected in the need of reaching the ideal of ourselves. So we need to destroy weaknesses. So we want to become what other people want us to be, and then of course we are not brave enough to approach them, and we lose hope that they will understand them. So we have more and more fears, we are more and more, and we are lost more and more, and we depart from the real world. So we are sinking in the monothematic world without bonds, and we are playing games in our mind, and our lives are lived by institutions, but it's a game of appearances, which is subordinated to this advertisement in Berlin to eliminate weaknesses. There is only one logic, so don't demand too much from you. It's an empty slogan, isn't it? A binding social contract. The fascist state of mind is not a special quality which can be placed somewhere far away. Which it's the mind which has no doubts that it has chosen the right track. The mind that doesn't tolerate weaknesses and fears. It doesn't tolerate risk and getting closer to other people. Wants uniformization, perfection, and elimination of any differences, any opposition, anything that is on its way. To triumph, it needs to make everyone and everything subordinate to its own dynamic. I don't know if we're really in it, but I know there's a temptation to become a part of it. So the new social contract requires that we should recognize new reality. So there is only, in this world, there's only something that should be, not that something that there is. Thank you.
O, już poradzę sobie. Tak, jest okej. Odzyskanie więzi z samym sobą.
Regaining the link to yourself is like a psychotherapeutical or CrossFit statement, and I don't know if we are able to move away from the mirror where we look, or if we are able to hear a second. The next speaker is the person whom I know the longest of all the people delivering POWI speeches. Copywriter and PR specialist. Manager of projects in culture and business. working for liberty, and we are very happy to have her here despite the parallel, simultaneous Festival of Four Cultures. I know it may sound trivial, but I would like to say that she has the most Instagram and Facebook-friendly gingerbreads you can imagine. Katarzyna Bieńkiewicz. After such recommendation, what else could I add? It's all because of the gingerbreads. Whenever Leszek asks me to tell about something, it's always about kids. I write about kids. My children are over there, and they have just had a fight over a Twix bar. So I'm not sure whether I'm a good expert. The values of our generation, every analysis is a generalization, and every generalization is unfair. Which generation? Our meaning which one? In a general classification, we are millennials, and I can't feel any generation link with somebody who was born in 2000. On the 4th of June 1989, I was wearing a pink rubber band with cats on my hair. I assume that this is the generation of born around 1980 plus minus 10 years. Are we a generation at all? Or an intergeneration, an interface between communist citizen and citizen of the world, by definition slightly lost, not linked to the values which were taught in the childhood, but we were vaccinated with them. With such polarization of stances and opinions, can we talk about the values of our generation? Actually, the only space where we can generalize, for which we can generalize, is this room. So, welcome to our bubble, and let's make it the title of this presentation. We are a generation brought up by grandmothers who remembered the war, who were afraid of God's wrath and remembered that everything had to be eaten. I still do believe that if I eat the whole dinner, tomorrow the sun is going to shine. We are the first generation of parents who were aware of children's rights. The first generation we gained access to all pink plastic goods of the world. The first generation with half having a university degree, living abroad on holiday and learning languages. The first generation which can communicate with the world online. And the first generation we can work and live abroad, and which enters international relations and has international children. We are the pioneers, indeed. We are the first generation which lost its temper. We flood our children with experience, plastics, and we impose too many duties on ourselves. We are the first generation that reflects it's necessary to stop the merry-go-round because we experience fear and climate change. Most probably, we are the last generation that will live longer, easier, and in a more abundant way than our grandparents and parents, because we do live a nice way, don't we? Our grandmothers were bringing up children during the war, communism, our parents during raising capitalism. We have the Ministry of Education and distant teaching. That's not the worst case scenario you can invent. Why, as parents, we feel it is so difficult? I think we undermined the majority of values that we were brought up with. We were nurtured by the slogan of God, honor, homeland. Somebody called us John Paul II's generation, but we gave up church as the community and authority. For many of us, fatherland is no longer the holy Polish territory that we need to defend. Today, we have open borders and little home fatherlands in our hands, in our heads. We don't want to defend them, but we want to develop them. Patriotism is no longer a victim, it's work, paying taxes, social activity, waste collection, and cleaning dog litter. It lost its romanticism and gained a lot of effort. It's difficult. We no longer teach our children to respect others. The concept of being nice, of being obedient, is something that we blew up. Our kids don't have to be clean, modest, and sit silent, especially when somebody harms them. We understand virtues in a different way, but it's difficult. Today, we can say dry jokes. You have to work for your authority, whether the Minister of Education likes it or not. Both children and fish can express their opinions. Teenagers can affect what cars we purchase and on what holiday we go. We raise a generation which has more rights than duties, and we avoid any force solutions. And one more saying: if you didn't want to go to school, you will work physically. We were taught that good education and excellent marks are what you need. Our children are going to do the jobs that don't exist. Eat the meat and you can leave the potatoes. And nowadays the meat is no longer trendy, and we throw away 10 million tons of food. What do we offer to our kids instead of these values that we were given? It's a shift towards nature, closeness, love, friendship, which are more difficult because they are not accepted without any criticism. We are the first generation determined to raise our kids to be happy and not to eternality. The first generation which no longer thinks children are indispensable in our lives. That is why parenthood is often burdened with a sense of responsibility, because childhood for our children should be joyful, and we are always in between the meat and the potatoes, the value, the symbol, the curse. And the source of power for our generation is the change in the approach to the world, communication between humans, the change in the perception of humans, which happens in an unprecedented speed. But this is also a unique potential and unique opportunities for change, meant as the opportunity to change the world here, now, at home, at work. These are not the political parties that have the power. We do have it. We, the parents, teachers, grandparents, and everybody who is with us. It's up to us to depend whether our kids are going to be free, open to the world, open to others, active and involved, and whether they are going to be happy. But in a long-term perspective, it is possible only if we open the bubble. Very often, when a concept of change occurs at school or change in behavior, leaving the comfort zone, we hear the argument of those who feel safe and comfortable in the bubble. We managed, so our kids will manage it too. Or, oh, don't exaggerate. My kids survived the system. The same arguments are quoted when you say, I managed it, you can be a CEO too. That's true, since our kids are not capable to catch up with too much teaching, we'll help them. If we don't want to have kids, or we don't want to have more kids, we'll manage anyway. if there is a risk that our baby can be lethally ill, we'll manage it anyway, regardless of what decision we make. If it's not possible to bring up the kid here, we'll manage anyway, but that's not the point. The value of such meetings as we have here, the spirit of freedom games, is the energy of of common experiences and common mindsets. The power to act, inspirations and ideas are the power, but they need to go beyond the bubble. We, as we are here, have to fight for modern education for all kids, not only our kids. For respect to social dialogue, dialogue outside the bubble, decent payment for teachers, and better working conditions, equal access to family planning, sensible support for families, availability of creches, kindergartens, and support for families with disabled children, available culture. Let's come back to the communities that are not only limited to the people who are similar to us. Let's discuss, try to persuade, try to convince the unconvincible ones. We're all important, we all matter, although not all of us manage, but we can change something only if we stick together.
Trzeba
You have to be very brave to be so sincere. I think I would find it problematic to be so courageous if my children were here. Kasia distracted the thesis or task I have produced, but I hope that the next speaker will get the framework back. You will find out why. Director of the Legal Department of the City of Łódź, member of the Human Rights Commission of the National Council of the Republic of Poland, legal counselor. I've got the title of his speech. Stay with me. Doppelstadt and the New Social Contract about Constitutional Principialism. Marcin Górski. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very difficult heart for many reasons. I was listening to Stanisław Łubieński with a great attention. Well, the things you were talking about are much more important than the things I've got to say. I referred to Staszek's speech because he was talking about these decisions of ministers who are responsible for nature. I'm a lawyer, and I am related to the Ministry of Nature. Well, what can I say? The social contract. The question that accompanies these freedom games, it's only reasonable when actually it is delivered. So once we meet the provisions, the fixing mechanism starts. So when lawyers discuss during the freedom games about the new social contract, I think that in Poland, the innovation of this new contract is not that we make a deal together, a new deal, because we could leave the deal that was used by our generation, because our adulthood lasts as long as the Polish constitution so far. So the novelty of the deal would be that we would follow the provisions of this contract. So the novelty of the social contract would mean that we would depart from the fictitious state, the state that is saturated with constitutional permissivism. Professor Jerzy Zajadło, he is the winner of the Katarzyna Award by University of Warsaw for the mini majoritica. He referred to the Doppelstadt concept, the dual state. So it referred to the feeling of Nazis context, the framework of the Weimar Republic. So there was this duality of the political aspects and economic aspects. It wasn't the feature only of Nazis' totalitarianism. And many lawyers conclude that this phenomenon it takes place in the modern Poland, the phenomenon of parallel functioning of the legal order set up in the constitution and the reality that is witnessed on everyday basis. If I were to talk about my dreams concerning the new social deal, I would like to say that my dream is not the new social deal as the new contents, because in my opinion, this content is okay, but it's the principialism of meeting the provision. So I think that this principialism should be independent of the personal views. 2016. This is when Antoni Scalia died, an outstanding American judge, a conservatist. But he was following the static constitutional interpretation. And when he was talking about constitutional rightness concerning burning the American flag, so he approved the constitutionality of burning the flags. So somebody he said that if it was my decision, I would imprison everybody who would be wearing sandals and was burning the flag. But I'm not the king. So I dream about a state that principally will be meeting this this contract, this deal. So I'm dreaming of the country where each act will be examined by the constitutional tribunal. So. And I'm against this ideological approach in making judgments. So I dream of the state where constitutional judges will be able to take the attitudes, so there will be a spectrum of constitutional agreement. So I dream of the states that will be brave enough to defend its independence, even if there will be judges who will have extreme views. I dream of the state that will respect social fairness. It is written down in the Polish constitution. I dream of the state that will be a common good of all citizens and allows the citizens to be a part of these goods. I dream of the state that is aware of its rooting in the constitution, in the experience of totalitarian, and it's not going back to the principles that were characteristic for the Stalinism. And I dream of the states that is not afraid to meet challenges. In 25 years in Poland, the size of the population will double, and there will be more senior citizens. I dream of the state that will not play with the lives of our lives for the political winnings, and to gain voters will not lie about climate disaster. I dream of the state that introduces the ban on abortion and the leader of the leading party says that there are aircrafts that will take pregnant women to London for abortion. Another condition is that the state will provide good living standard for LGBT citizens. I dream of the state that is not lying, that is not using anti-refugee politics, and it's not trying to hide the problem. This problem will intensify very soon. So I dream of the country that will be making good decisions. I dream of the state that does not introduce the state of emergency, pretending that it's not introducing such state. It pretends not to pay compensation for restrictions imposed by the state. I also dream of the state that in the times of pandemic introduces obligation of vaccination. And I dream of the state that is not playing up with deficits of knowledge of the citizens. I dream of fairer Poland. I saw an interview with Margaret Thatcher when she was the leader of conservative opposition. I was really shaken by this interview. I know that that most of you don't like Margaret Thatcher, but she was talking about some fundamental aspects, and she was very sincere. She was very sincere. So I would like to make sure that the public discourse about the law in Poland is very sincere and open. Margaret Thatcher, if you probably know, she was brave enough to say, she said it actually to the voters. She said there is nothing like public money. There is taxpayers' money. There is no state money. There is taxpayers' money. So if the state wants to give money to someone, the state has to take this money in the form of taxes, or it has to draw a loan. Maybe you do not like this approach, but she was very honest and open. Don't you miss this honesty and openness? I miss it. In Poland, we are lied. Every day we hear that the government is giving us so much. They are giving this money from some mysterious sources. I want the state that treats seriously itself. So for this, you need this constitutional principalism, which is the backbone of the honest state. Privately, I cannot like the idea of social justice, but as a lawyer, I will observe the rules. Judges and diplomats, some people can perceive the Article 1 of the Constitution that the Poland's Republic is a common good of all citizens. So it refers that it's not good, it's not for women who do not want to give birth to children. But we have made the deal, the social contract. It's not the contract among politicians or lawyers. It's the contract, it's the deal of all citizens. And we have agreed to accept this contract. So I dream of the state with the social contract and the political reality is fair. I don't want us to think of the new contract. Everything has been written down, but we have to observe it. So I want this constitutional principalism. So I want to execute the current social contract. We have to be serious about it. Thank you.
Ten wiersz już był dzisiaj przytaczany w innej dyskusji.
This poem was quoted today. The truth will restore the truth to our words. Let's law mean the law, and fairness means fairness. Tuwim.
No cóż, tak jak zaczęliśmy, tak chyba należy skończyć. Tym panią państwo znają doskonale.
the lady who is going to deliver the speech is somebody whom you know very well. She is not only the voice, but also the cultural spirit. She is going to run Liberté Spirit soon, Liberté podcast. Cultural manager, president of the City of Literature Foundation, co-organizer of art, literary and culture events, columnist, lecturer at the Jagiellonian University. Olga Brzezińska.
Dziękuję. Dobry wieczór Państwu.
Good evening. I'm going to talk about culture, which I'm sure is no wonder to anybody. Culture as autothelic nature as such, which is not only the value of our generation, but perhaps our generation is the one who is going to take the value into the future as one of the priorities of the new social contract. Looking into the future is always an exercise of imagination, empathy, and bravery. The new social contract is supposed to be an answer to important questions on our aspirations and ambitions, what is ahead of us and how we want to live together. What story do we come from and what story we construct? On how engaging, involving, and convincing our story will be, our future depends. There is no mention of new social contract without culture. This is the space for all these stories. This is where we find the answers to where we come from, who we are, and where we go to. Culture matters because democracy matters. During a stronger populism and increasing polarization that appears in country, states, and families, democratic values gain a completely different dimension. We observe the creation of authoritarian regimes and successes of populist states and parties in Europe and worldwide. These trends weaken social cohesion, and they are a challenge for democratic governments. Democracy has become extremely vulnerable and brittle. Instead of responding to contemporary challenges, we are divided, driven by unhealthy emotions and arguing over petty things. We are in a special moment when we are the victims of divisions, polarized narratives. We try to look for ways to get out of the trap. Even our common language is no longer a common language because the same words gain completely different meanings among those who are in argument, and they gain completely different intention. Let me quote Olga Tokarczuk from her Nobel Prize speech. The world is created of words. The way we perceive the world and we describe it matters. Not only historians know about it, but also all kinds of politicians and tyrants. Those who has and tells the story is the one who rules. What story do we have about what brings us together, how to find our way in the web of contradictory narrations? If we accept that today is tomorrow or it's later than you think, we need culture, literature, art, theater, music, film, language, and images in order to see what surrounds us and what we want to change. Open society must not function without culture. Owing to it, we are capable to understand the more complex world that surrounds us. We are able to build social links built on trust. Apart from providing purely aesthetic emotions, art boosts creation and imagination. It inspires for reflection and educates us by creating common experiences and encouraging to participation. Art and culture develop societies in dispersed public sphere. Active and conscious citizens are indispensable to maintain democracy. Culture and art let us nurture what, in the complexity of stimuli and narratives, has the power to save us, the sensitivity. We need sensitivity to take care of our individual lot, but also the common goods, to perceive others in the diversity of their experiences, to see the world which is shouting to us, the world of nature which is overheated and suffocated by our unhumane nature. We need people who think and who are sensitive enough to imagine and to build common future. These peoples can meet in the culture space that help us strengthen the key competences: empathy, sensitivity, openness, critical thinking. They will decide how we'll shape our future tomorrow in the space of dialogue and freedom, where many voices and many experiences can be reverberated with those whom we need and with those whose diversity astonishes us, but from whom we can learn and extend the borders of our world. We are in a critical moment. The world we have known so far has ended. The old order has expired. We reached the borders of expansion in the previous model. It revealed the scale of our brittleness, fragility, and exposed the arrogance with which we ignored the warning signals. Is it really possible to talk about culture when we face such tremendous challenges? Yes, it is, because culture is an indispensable part of social jigsaw puzzle, but for it, we'll not be able to understand the modified reality or handled emotions, the emotions that accompany us in the sphere of creative approach, imagination. We need a culture to tame what is happening around us and to understand, as well as agree upon how to get over the crisis. We need a culture more than we used to. Our collective individual well-being development in the time of crisis, also the survival, depend on the quality and complexity of our nature, the capacity of our imagination, the ability to think in a critical way, innovation to find the new answers to old questions and to ask new questions that will help us create the vision of future. Culture, in this sense, is the tool of change, is a resource and potential. This way, we can communicate and understand how to respond to the accumulating problems of our planet, social inequalities, climate change, erosion of human relations. Culture should be learned. We should get ready to confront the complex reality in order not to surrender to our intellectual and spiritual laziness. We need to challenge the hierarchies, boost interest and the will to participate in continuous exchange of senses, ways of expression, symbols, codes, interpretations that are the important element building our individual and collective identities. The common conviction that culture is a branch of economy was abolished. This is quite the opposite. Economy is a part of culture. During the economic forums, people discuss growth indices, KPI statistics, and economic factors, but also education of the future, whose quality will determine our civilization development. The greatest minds postulate the development of the competences of the future, owing to which it is possible to make an important social change, and which can be supported by education through culture, contact with art and culture. Cultural education is an indispensable component of general education, and it means education for conscious participation in culture. And participation in culture enables participation in the life of the community. Out of the many advantages of contact with culture, let me emphasize one, which is perhaps the pivotal one: boosting imagination, extending imagination, and being educated by culture and through culture. Imagination, experiment, suspicion, conditional thinking, and creating simulation helps us adapt, because it teaches us how to flexibly deal with the problems we encounter. Without intellectual exercises in creating the potential scenarios, we are deprived of the power to create our reality, and consequently, we have to respond on a current basis to occasions and hazards. In Poland, cultural education is really miserable. In the common educational system, during 8 years, students spend slightly over 200 minutes during art and visual and music classes. For example, in other countries, it is between 800 up to 2,500 lessons. It is worth asking a question about the culture in the context of education, how important and intertwined they are. Czesław Miłosz, when he came back to Poland, he was still surprised that the Ministry of Culture and Education are separate institutions. We have to remember that these are combined vessels. For a number of years, we hear an anecdote how Winston Churchill responded to drastic cuts on culture due to war expenses. He asked, since there is no culture, what are we fighting for? Nobody confirms that he really said so, but the question is worth being asked again, especially now when during the new social contract we argue over what kind of Poland we aspire for and what kind of future we're dreaming of. The unprecedented situation and adaptation to the changing reality, as well as getting ready for the world after pandemic, has to use creative solutions, and their range has to match the scale of the problem. This is our task, to move our imagination, to create the world where the culture can flourish and create conditions for social development. 2021. Do we really have to become convinced about the importance of culture? Should we repeat over and over again the truth that the culture matters, that this is this platform of social contract, that it orients human events, that it adds values, that it helps to tame, describe, and explain the surrounding world, its complexity, and this is a measure of soft competences necessary to coexist in a community for different humans: social trust, empathy, dialogue, and solidarity. Today we meet to discuss the new social contract, to close the 3 days holiday of ideas, reasons, and sharing experience. We mention the values of our generation. Let me speak out that culture is value of its own, the subject of special care and responsibility of the citizens and the authority. Without culture, we can't do anything. We won't be able to talk, sit at the same table, organize political, social, and economic order. Deliberating on the new social contract on all its dimensions, we have to make an exercise that checks our imagination, answer the question, what is the cost of underestimating the culture and placing it low on our list of priorities? It determines all aspects of our life and the quality of democracy in our state, and finally the quality of our life.
Nie wiem jak Państwo, ale ja tu usłyszałem co najmniej kilka.
I don't know what you have heard, but I have heard quite a lot of ministerial exposés in free Poland. I don't know if Czesław Miłosz would be happy that this man teaches our children and is going to manage culture. Mr. Czarnek, this is terrible. To talk about yourselves, to talk. We need language. And the next speaker is working with the language on everyday basis in her texts. She's a journalist, reporter. She wrote some books. She made a report on Muslim women. She delivered a speech during the Freedom Games. She's also a journalist for Gazeta Wyborcza, The High Hills. She is writing about politics, about church, and instead of staying here with us in Łódź for 3 days, she has organized picnics. She took part in a charity picnic, and now she has reached us to deliver her speech. Anna J. Dudek.
Proszę Państwa, jestem mała, więc może...
Good evening. I am quite short, so I need to have the mic a bit lower. Thank you very much that you are still here, although it's quite late. My name is Anna Dudek. I'm really a journalist of Wysokie, Obcasy, of Gazeta Wyborcza, because I know the stories of many women. But I want to introduce myself differently. I am a daughter of Małgorzata, a granddaughter of Irena, and granddaughter Jadwiga. I'm also the mother of Gustav. He is 2.5 years. I'm Ula's aunt, and I'm telling you about this because I would like to make sure that the voices of our daughters, of our children, should be heard. I came here as a citizen too, because I am mad and I'm really worried about the current situation. Several days ago, I read a good text in Republika Daily, and it's a text about Afghan city where women disappeared, and now the city is monochromatic and boring. This is a problem. So men really everywhere, men want to keep us at home. They don't want us to go to school. They want us to clean the house, to cook for family, and they want us to give birth to children. So this is the reason why we are deleted from the history, and the reason why we are deprived of our rights. We are sitting here in this room, I'm standing here, but we are all in the same situation. So if any one of us becomes pregnant, and if something goes wrong, we have no right to decide about ourselves, about our families. Our fundamental rights are violated. Several months ago, I heard an interview with the president of the ruling party. Well, and he said, it's freedom. Well, if you don't like this freedom, you can go abroad and have abortion. So this right of this pseudo-tribunal of Julia Przyłębska resulted in a protest of women. Many women and men were furious about it. So it's just like a culmination of this paternalistic approach. Men treat us as little girls, and they have to decide what's good for us. Our dark reality. Well, it also involves beating up women by police. It's also about spraying gas into our eyes, or making charges against Marta Lempart and other similar activists. In my opinion, it's exactly the same situation as the situation of women in Kabul. I usually walk. I don't have a driving license, so I cover many kilometers, and I am often accompanied by Dudek. Sometimes it's racing. Dudek weighs 13 kilos. A pram weighs several kilos. The shopping bag is quite heavy too, so I carry 20-something kilos. So the pavements are really not smooth. Then I have to carry the pram upstairs. And I'm telling you about this because it's not only about breaking the glass ceilings. I know this term is now abused, but we really have to climb the pavement curbs. We have to carry the prams upstairs. I started telling you about this pseudo verdict. This is a cherry on the cake, this nasty cake of the paternalistic treatment of women. So it just shows an obvious nature, which shows that women are not treated seriously. Nobody treats women seriously. So we are really, when we go to the doctor, when we meet police or officials, they do not treat us seriously. Politicians don't treat us seriously, not all, luckily. We should just have children. We shouldn't think. If we don't like something, we should just keep quiet. So when politicians say that family is Polish, it's holy, and we should protect families, I think of specific politicians. I would like to send them to some places. These are the addresses of female activists. Activists who have been fighting for women's rights for many years. It's not verbal fighting. They are doing great, but also very difficult work. So I would send them to Krystyna Kacpur, who is the Federation for Women and Family Planning. So Krystyna could tell them how easy it's to get contraceptives in Poland. So it's 30.5%. That's the rate of access. In Ukraine, this value is 60%. So it's you can't really get emergency contraception unless you have money and you've got time. So if you're lucky, you will go to the doctor who has not endorsed the clause. Krystyna can tell the politicians about the depression of women who carry damaged fetus. Krystyna could tell them how many telephone calls are received, that sometimes husbands, friends are calling because women are unable to speak. They can only howl. I've got a quiz about healthcare. How long it takes to diagnose endometriosis? 8 to 10 years. Do you know why? Because women's suffering and pain is not treated seriously. If a woman suffers, complains about pain, the doctor tells her, well, when you have your period, you must suffer. And of course, nobody really informs us about some symptoms. So women die. There is a report. I'm going to mention it briefly. 2 years ago, it was published by this organization, so institutional abuse in Poland. This is a shocking piece of text. In Poland, there are 17 million patients who need gynecological treatment, but this year, only 4 million women, 1/4 of the women used this kind of medical help. What about the rest? Don't they deserve this health care? Women often have to go to private gynecologists. Many women cannot afford such visits. In villages, there are 4,000 women per one surgery. That's fine if a woman has a car or somebody can drive her to a bigger town, but usually these women have 3 or 5 children, maybe 1 child, maybe old parents, maybe a farm, maybe a husband she has to look after, and there is no bus, there is no way to reach doctors in the cities. And bus transport has been eliminated. And there is a specific procedure of inserting a coil and removing the coil. So out of these 4 million of women, only 8,000 women had the coil inserted. You can also call. Another good address is the foundation Give Birth in Human Conditions. So activists can tell you how women are treated in maternity wards, how the standards are not met. Now the situation has improved, but still it's not very good. Women are treated as customers, and everybody else knows better how she feels giving a child. When I was leaving maternity ward, I had some bruising made by the midwife who was helping me, who was teaching me how to breastfeed my baby. A friend of mine heard the comment that she shouldn't have children because she's mentally sick. I met many women. I know a woman who has 2 sons, and she is disabled. She's very talented. She could write books. She's well educated, but she cannot go to work. She cannot earn, because if she earns anything, she will lose the benefit, and the benefit is just enough to buy some nappies. She's a single mother, and she has to do anything she can to buy the nappies, to have the pram. But this is the true Polish family. It's a holy family. So when violence occurs, nobody wants to notice the violence. Joanna Piotrkowska, the head of Feminoteka, shared a story with me. It was a small village in the north of Poland. Everybody knew each other. Everybody knew that in one family there was abuse, violence, brutal violence that was going on for many years. After many years, a court case was filed. And after the court hearing, actually the court case, the litigation lasted for quite a while. And then there was a judgment in suspension, and the father, the husband, came back home and he murdered his wife in front of the children because services are only interested in women when they are dead. And it's not an anecdote, unfortunately. I don't know whether it's enough to tell the system just fuck off. I think that's enough, because I wonder how much women's life is worth. Well, I don't know whether I have insulted you with my anger. I am really angry. Just like when I see women who go to the police, who are victims of violence, of abuse, and nobody believes them. These are the stories of women. These women often call me or write to me. They want to share the stories with me because they think that I am the last resort. I can help them. Violence is everywhere, in internet, at home, at work, in an office, at police station, in doctor's surgery. So I am really angry with the system, which keeps penalizing us. If there are some litigations going on, they last long time. But we have the Istanbul Convention, but in a moment it won't be here in Poland. The Polish officials say that Polish regulations are sufficient. So I'm going to share several more stories, if you allow me. So Eva's husband was giving her cocaine and then he was raping her. So once her 6-year-old boy found her, he gave her some water and she became conscious again. Another woman was 6 months pregnant, and then her husband attached her to a tree in the forest, and he drove away because he wanted her to understand her mistake and stop provoking her. The court didn't assess it as violence. Another woman was driven over in front of her children. The court sent the family for therapy. A man probably abused her daughter. The girl peace when she sees him. She's under the care of a psychologist. And now he's the carer of this girl. The mother has been deprived of contact. Hanka was running away from home because she was beaten up, and when she was trying to find help, only the 24th institution helped her. Carolina has PTSD, but she is afraid to go to the doctors because she thinks that the husband will use it in the court and he will present her as mentally sick. So courts don't treat us seriously. So if we submit a case on violence, the courts treat women as hysteric. They are asking the woman, didn't you know who you married? 25 years passed and now you have realized. Prosecutors do not like such cases because they damage their statistics. Eurydica's association was established. It's one of the internet association. It helps women who are fighting for their children and who want to have violence-free homes or want to run away from violence. This association helps mothers' rights. It's quite symptomatic that when husbands fight, that husbands are really very popular in the parliament, but women are anonymous. Why? Because they are afraid of their partner's husband, and they are afraid that something can be used against them in the court. That's why they do not go to psychologists or psychiatrists. Although these conditions leads them to anxiety, to depression, and other mental disorders. I would like to share the story of Magda, because this is what happened. She went to the court and she heard that currently policemen are taking away her 3-year-old son to foster family. He spent 10 months in the foster family because although the opinion on her mental health was positive, she was suspected of her that she was unstable. Franek, the son, spent that 10 months. He didn't grow even by half a centimeter. He stopped speaking and he started peeing. And only after these 10 months, he went back to his mom. So Magda is a victim of abuse. If a woman is fighting for her children, and if she wants to live without violence, she is suspected of parent alienation. This is a scientific theory. All civilized countries have withdrawn this theory. In Poland, it's very popular. So the responsibility is always placed on a woman, and it's the basis to take the child away from such mother. So in Poland, we seem to protect life, but millions of children do not receive maintenance. That means that 200,000 fathers do not pay for their children. And we know it from the foundation. In Poland, 1 million of women are victims of violence, and these millions include our colleagues, friends, mothers. They are probably here in this room. But when feminists, when activists from the Center of Women's Rights or from Feminoteka, if they protest to change this reality, they listen. This is an anonymous email. You fucking bitch, you can disappear, you will disappear yourself if you don't stop. And the police didn't take any measures. So the word fuck out has been already stated. I think it's rather mild and it's quite adequate. So please think about these women. Think about the stories of this 1 million. We are angry, but very often we feel so tired. Thanks to the strike, you can see this anger in the streets, and now we know we are not alone and we will never walk alone. Thank you.
Mam nadzieję, że wybaczą Państwo, że to...
I hope you understand why this speech was so long. You have heard that women are no longer going to wait. They will take what they want, equality and fairness. The last presentation during the Freedom Games will be delivered by writer and reporter who issued some novels such as Toxemia, Kushi Bucharest. She lives in Warsaw and in Tirana. And her presentation will be A for Polish alphabet, or being illiterate, which in Polish starts with A as well. Małgorzata Rejmer. Good evening. I would like to share with you my version of Polish alphabet or secondary illiteracy. Poles don't feel like reading. 58% of Poles did not read a single book last year. Three-fourths don't understand what they read. 10 million don't have a single book at home, and they're still doing well with God's help. B, like ladybird in Polish. Ladybird, ladybird, go to heaven and bring us a piece of bread, since the prices in Poland are rising. And how much a bread costs and a bowl of rice? C, for feminine virtues. The Minister of Education supports proper education for preparing girls for being virtuous women. They are spiritually bad and egoistic. Their moral backbones should be broken and re-stabilized. D, decent, good children. Political prisoners of Polish schools taught how to cherish the Pope. It would be good if they knew how to face the tankers. We need your blood. It is so sweet to die for your fatherland. Why Poland? Because you're worth it. Jug. A young jug. When I came back to Poland and I heard the word, this word used for young people who we associate with an elderly man who seems to know everything but doesn't know it all. Radka Demarkova told a story of a literary critic who started to ridicule that she does not appreciate Beckett's motives in Demarkova's works. Petra Hulowa told me recently that the Czech language does not have the slang word for an old man because nobody did not understand it. That critic didn't simply know what it was all about. Politicians are exhausted. 75% are permanently exhausted. When I entered the Poles are into Google, the first hit was the Poles are tired, and then the Poles are the best. The Poles are ugly. The Poles are poor. The Poles are like lava. The Poles are sad. The Poles are overworked. The Poles are fat. The Poles are mischievous. F in Polish stands for wave, the new coronavirus waves that are going to flood us, the water that is going to absorb us because of global warming, the waves of wrath. The next one is G for border in Polish, or hospitality. Just as we are sitting here at our state border, we have a group of people who are hungry and thirsty. 2 migrants near Tiraspol are in a critical condition. One is in a diabetic coma and lost consciousness. But the ambulance did not come, and the state guards do not respond, most probably because they don't know the Polish saying that it's the Polish virtue to open the door to everybody. So I'm waiting for the refugees at the Polish border to die. Don't let them disturb us when we tell a prayer during the holiday, and we'll pray for the peace for the world, and pray for the terrible refugees to escape. Age, money. Intronization. In 2016, that Jesus Christ was announced as the King of Poland. Everything started to settle down. The Polish state was entrusted to Jesus Christ, and everything that constitutes Poland. The cost of the celebration for 6,000 people was not so high. It was one of such undertakings that was really valuable and beneficial for Poland. I do hope you are sleeping well. J. Just like the name of the village of Jedwabne, or silk. Silk dresses, silk shirts, the town of Jedwabne. K. Church. Catholic Church is feeling well, but still there are attacks on the Polish church. Fortunately, there is Robert Bąkiewicz. I am ready to take the sword to fight. Are we the knights of the 21st century? We, all Catholics, are appointed to become knights in the holy war, in the holy fight. We don't know if Bąkiewicz is also fighting with his demons. L. LGBT. These are not humans. This is ideology. These are not humans. These are scapegoats on the altar of Polish hypocrisy. Eł. Like shovel. A 64-year inhabitant of Płock killed 4 puppies with a shovel. There was over 4.5 promils in his blood. Some people heard the puppies moaning in his backyard. They could also see the man walking with a shovel and the dogs moaning. After some hits, everything went silent. M like a small bottle of alcohol. 6,000 clients who buy these little bottles called monkeys in Poland visit the shop. You drink them quickly, before work, after work. It's just a small bottle. They are so sweet. They taste nice. 12,000 people die every year in Poland because they drink too much alcohol. It's like a small village. N. Innocence. Nobody feels guilty. O. Fatherland. Seppert said that the more you talk about fatherland, the less is left. P. Ashes. In Warsaw in 1945, you could find piles of ash, which at first glance looked like dirty soil. Initially, people were trying to find some dead bodies underneath. Only those who came afterwards made them realize that these were the bodies. The dirty black mass filled with bones, flashing with some jewelry, did not hide the dead bodies, but was composed of them. Hundreds of people were incinerated, and their ashes collected into piles. Around 8.5 tons of ashes were collected in 115 coffins. During the funerals, no politicians made any statement. Nobody dared to capture such a dramatic event. This is what I read on the 1st of August in Facebook. I couldn't stop thinking about them for weeks. When I was going to the Żabka corner shop through Wiatraczna roundabouts, I could see piles of ashes. R. The heaven, the rapist's heaven. Every third Pole claims that sex without another person's consent can be justified by circumstances. What was she wearing? Did she drink alcohol? They deserved it, the bitches. Do you want to avoid being raped? Don't wear the clothes as if you were a bitch. S. Suicide committed by children. Last year, 107 children committed suicide. The youngest one was 8 years old. 44% of Polish teenagers reveal symptoms of depression. Poland is ranked as the second for the number of juvenile suicides. What about the strong Polish family? These statistics are falsified by the European Union. Waste. We import more waste than we export. Between 2015 and 2018, we imported 3 times more waste than before. The waste that we would like to export from Poland include LGBT, the left wings and atheists, refugees. Go out. People who are different, get out. This is the country for moral Catholics, and let Norway adopt Olga Tokarczuk. T. Tinder. Tinder bastards that my former boyfriend recommended to me. I met him through Tinder. The users post screenshots. Males have different ways to chat up. Do you like it in your ass? I would like to hug you, but I'm afraid that I'm going to fuck you. What about a blowjob, bitch? Despite males being highly interested in sex, there are fewer and fewer children being born. We die because of COVID that is actually not there. In 2020, the number of POW decreased by 115,000. There is a lower number of Poles enjoying strong Poland. Ooh, Uber. Poles complain that Ukrainians, Russians, Georgians, and Hindi drive Uber cars. They keep silent because they don't speak Polish. I don't feel like talking because they are tired. Nobody wonders whether they really suffer. W stands for freedom or liberty in Polish. Liberty is something that some need, while others don't. Some are afraid of it, while others are not afraid of it. X. Xanax. Drug dealers in Warsaw, and most probably somewhere else as well, sell Xanax, which is a drug against anxiety when you suffer from panic attacks. The smallest package containing 30 pills can be purchased at 120 zlotys. Xanax makes you addicted because it cuts off your emotions and brings peace. It is as if the sea was opening in front of you as you were swinging in a hammock, but there is neither the sea nor the hammock. Every fourth adult Pole has some mental or psychological disturbance. A dealer I know experienced a nervous breakdown. Now his colleagues come to him to check whether he has not committed suicide because they are afraid there will be nobody to offer Xanax. Psychiatrists take 150 zlotys for a prescription for Xanax. Z stands for homework assignment. Your grandmother is carrying a cross. Your mother is experiencing painful relationships with your father. Your aunt says that her life is like the road of the cross. And finally, Jews. You are the Jew. I miss you, Jew. Wrong is the next letter, because our country is wrong and is not doing well. Thank you. Now I would like to invite all authors of power speeches to join me on the stage. This is the last Freedom Games. Unless you come here and then it turns out that we are going to organize the next one, please join me. This is the only condition to organize the next Freedom Games. Otherwise, it's going to be the next event of that kind. And a round of applause for the values of our generation. I would like to invite Błażej Lenkowski, who invited the Freedom Games when I was on holiday in Florence. Ladies and gentlemen, we have covered a long way, but it seems it was quite an interesting journey. And I do hope we are going to organize the next Freedom Games. I would like to invite our team, because 200 people were working with us. I would like to ask Liberty team, our volunteers, technicians, Agnieszka's team, please join me. Please come to the stage. I'm not sure this is everybody. 74 meetings, over 300 panelists, high speed of work. These are gorgeous people. I would like to thank you because we did something exceptional. Thank you for your hard work. I'm sure we're creating something exceptional and we are going to carry on. Next year, we are going to meet in October, between 14th and 16th October. 2022, of course. So I hope to see you then. See you next year.
It's not always easy to recognize. Maybe like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person, and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it.
Słuchajcie, jeszcze jedno. Ci z was, którzy jeszcze mają siłę, to 6. dzielnica. Adres znacie.
It means different things to different people. But for me, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, eventually bring us together.
Work is different now. We're commuting less, virtually meeting more. Separating work life and life can feel challenging. It's easy to forget that to thrive at work, we need to take care of ourselves. Microsoft Viva Insights offers new experiences to balance productivity and well-being. Personal insights help you stay at your best and most productive. Add structure to your remote workday by opting for a virtual commute, carving out time to have a productive start in the morning and mindfully disconnect in the evening. Protect time before your calendar fills up for focused work, coaching, and learning. Take regular mental breaks with Headspace, tapping into dedicated moments of mindfulness. Use emotional check-ins to tune into your day-to-day mindset and well-being. Strengthen team bonds with Stay Connected experiences that prompt you to praise collaborators, schedule one-on-ones, and follow up on pending commitments and outstanding tasks. Insights for managers and leaders offer windows into how work happens and the impact on employee well-being. Identify where teams may be isolated and take action to break down silos. Quickly discover opportunities to prevent burnout, promote coaching and development, and boost engagement. You and your team's well-being is important, especially in times of change. Taking care of one another allows you to thrive and your organization to build resilience. Experience how new well-being insights in Viva can help.
Liberté Talks to co ważne. Seria Liberté Talks realizowana jest dzięki wsparciu Google oraz Państwa darowiznom. Na podcast Książki z Puentą zaprasza Magdalena Melnyk.